Yeah, we do.
All right. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll vote. Item number 2 is a vote on the approval of the agenda.
I'll move it.
Second, McCoy.
All right. All those, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. I guess we probably needed to take roll call, didn't we, Scott? We'll go ahead and take roll. Is Tracy on to do that?
No, she's on vacation, but I'll take a shot at it.
Okay.
So we have Joe Gatto, Steve Gare, Gary Lorenz, Bob Andwig, Kyle Mertz,
Here.
Jeff Walter, 3, 4, 5, 6, Stephanie Riva,
Here.
Sarah Krosky, no, Chris Coleman, no. Matt McCoy,
Here.
anyone else I didn't name? Okay,
I think you got them.
Yep.
Thank you. Item number 4 is a vote on the approval of the meeting minutes.
Move by Andwig. Second, McCoy.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 5 is consent and vote on contracts and expenses. Todd, you're going to give us an update on that?
yeah, that we have one expense for you. It's related to the Purple Heart Highway study, HNTB, which we'll give a more report on later, but they did request payment of part of their contract, $6,540 and change. We'd recommend approval.
Any discussion?
Todd, is that based on a percentage of completion of work versus how much we owe them?
Yeah, it's what they've billed to date on the work that they've completed. Yes.
I'll move it, Gare.
Second.
Second from Stephanie.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 6 is report and vote, FYI, 2021-2024 Transportation Capital Improvement Program. Allison?
That's me. Thanks so much. So just an update. Annually, we put this report together. It does look at the next 4 years of fiscal spending within transportation across the metro. So it is based on submissions by the jurisdiction, so it's not necessarily fully complete, as some jurisdictions didn't submit anything. One thing to note is that it sounds like the draft copy of the report had the hazard mitigation funding within it. We did collect the hazard mitigation funding data with this data request. However, it really has nothing to do with the Transportation Capital Improvement Program. In the final draft, you'll see we'll send out a new one that has that removed and just noted is something that we're keeping track of. So we did the hazard mitigation plan. And you can go to the next slide. So just a basic overview of the projects you can see here, broken down by the cities as well as each of the project types. Just over $1 billion over the next handful of years being spent in the metro area. You will see water trails again this year was included as well in that final column there. Next slide. And then Aspen also broke it down by funding by project type as well as fiscal year. Again, with COVID, some of these numbers are going to be rough, but you can see per the usual, most of the money being spent on roads and parking lots. And then in 2023, we see quite a large uptick in actual funding being spent that year. Next slide, thank you. This map is also online as well, but this does outline where each of the projects are happening. One thing to note annually is that we do get a lot of projects that are put into our sheets as various locations. And so there is some here, some on the map, but for the most part, there is an interactive map that you can go on and click online and see where the projects are happening and when they're scheduled to be done. And then the last part is overlaying these maps with the EJ areas. This year, 16% of the region lives within an EJ area, and over the next handful of years, 11% of funding on transportation and capital improvement will be spent in those EJ areas. So that is my report. Staff does recommend approval, and I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Any questions for Allison? Thank you.
I just have one question. The water trails there, there's only what, $900,000?
Mm-hmm.
What, I guess that's surprising that there's only 900,000 when, how many $1 million project is that? And I don't know how much has been raised so far, but.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. For the build grant, that was not built into this quite yet, just because of the nature of where it stands right now. However, two jurisdictions have actually put money on the ground. I believe it's Johnston and West Des Moines, West Des Moines Boathouse, and then the Terra Park improvements up in Johnston along the Beaver Creek accesses. So no, the build grant is not in there, and the fundraising that the Great Outdoors Foundation has been doing is also not included in there. But I would say that next year you'll probably see quite a big jump on those numbers specifically.
Yeah, this is only taking what is in the community's comprehensive or capital improvement programs. So those larger projects aren't in the capital improvement programs yet.
Dylan, are we asking cities to update this based on COVID? I guess, I don't know, a bunch of these projects getting funded with road use tax money that we're not getting much of.
Yeah, and I don't know if Allison, if you have a more accurate answer, but we did ask the community to just take their best guess for this year. So we didn't just take it from their CIPs. We asked the communities to give us what they are planning to do, and understanding that COVID is having an impact in that, to just take their best estimate at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the instructions we gave Aspen when making the ask, is just to make sure we note those assumptions in the report that things could change.
So other than Johnston and West Des Moines, nobody has anything in their 5-year capital improvements program for water trails yet?
So it doesn't look at 5 years, so just 2021 through 2024. So there might be some further out. That's why I assume next year there will be a larger jump within that category. But for the next couple of years, no one reported as such. So these are based on reports back to Aspen. And so as of right now, no one has reported as such so far.
I agree. I think you'll see a lot more in this report next year, and some of that might be in the earlier years, that as some of the design work gets finished on the downtown Scott Avenue piece.
I can tell you, our boathouse is wildly successful. There's a waiting line to get rentals, and people are actually taking the portage from Raccoon River Lake to the river itself. So if you haven't been down there since we opened it, it's packed.
Yeah, I've talked with Ryan Penning, the parks person who you have in charge of that, and he's super happy with the project. So.
Yeah, and the guy that's running it, that's running Aquabi, he said every kayak and canoe's been sold out for months. But everything he's got at that lake, from what I understand, there's like a waiting list, and all the kayak lockers have already been rented. So it would suggest that there's a huge pent-up demand for some of this recreation.
Yeah. Nice project. Congratulations on it.
Todd, what is our policy? Maybe you can refresh me. This says 11% of the overall funding will be spent in the EJ areas. Do we have any type of policy at the MPO of what the percentage is typically allocated for those areas?
No, we don't have a specific policy on that. We've just been showing kind of what the population that lives in that area and the spending associated with it.
But we don't have anything historically. What has it been?
It's been in the 10 to 11% range over the last several years.
Okay. Any other questions? That is our only voting item on here on this agenda. So I would entertain a motion if there's not any other questions or comments.
Motion, Stephanie.
I'll second it, Andoing.
Great. Any other discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 7 is a report on fiscal year 2020 end of the year financial report. And Todd.
Yep, thank you. Just as a refresher, our end of year financial report is the state fiscal year July 1 through June 30th. Primarily funding sourced through USDOT grants on a reimbursement basis. We developed the end of year report to kind of compare what our budget was to what we actually spent. We shared this and then sent it out as part of the reminder. On the screen, you can see the report. Overall, we came in under our budget. There were a couple items where we were over. Office supplies and equipment. Office supplies, that's mostly related to buying stuff dealing with COVID that we didn't plan on. Equipment was a server that had to be replaced a little sooner than we anticipated. Dues were a little higher. We joined an association that does some federal legislative work to keep an eye more on some more eyes on the transportation bill as that gets renewed. Publications was the most over, and that related to Des Moines Register raising their rates quite substantially and having to do a few more notices than we have in past years. Otherwise, we were in pretty good shape. Be happy to discuss. The other one on strategic planning, that was over primarily due to having the salary and benefits survey done by Newport Group. We hadn't planned on that one in the budget previously. And then the travel demand model, we did more refinement on that related to the long range plan. So that one was over. But again, overall, we were within our budget and came in underneath our expected expenses in total. So
Thanks, Todd. Any questions? Any questions? Any comments? All right, we will move on to item number 8 is a report on our payment program pre-application from Zach.
Yes, just want to give you a quick update on the ICAP pre-applications that were submitted to us. The deadline for that was July 28th. Overall, we received 6 applications. Included in your agenda packet is a table that provides all the details of each one of those applications. You can see the basic information on the slide there in front of you. Des Moines, Norwalk, Dart, Altoona, Ankeny, and Grimes all submitted applications for ICAP. Next slide. The schedule moving forward, just as a reminder, in September, we will bring back this item for the exec and policy committees to approve. Once they've approved and we have resolutions for those projects, we'll forward those resolutions on to the project sponsors for them to include in their final applications, which are due to the DOT by October 1st. So those are the applications that have been submitted. And if you have any questions about the applications or the process moving forward, I'd be happy to take those questions at this time.
Thank you, Zach. Any questions for Zach? The ICAP program? All right, we'll move on to item number 9. It's a report from MPO 2019 Travel Time Reliability and Freight Reliability Report, Z.
Yep, thank you. So I'll be going to the 2019 report that was attached in the agenda packets. So starting off with a little bit of background. In 2017, the Federal Highway Administration finalized a series of performance measures.
Excuse me, Z.
Yes.
I can barely hear you.
Oh, okay. Is this better? I think.
Ah, yes, there you are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so I'll just begin again. Just a bit of background. In 2017, the Federal Highway Administration finalized a series of performance measures for state DOTs and MPOs to report. These performance measures include system performance and also freight performance. Under system performance, there are two metrics. The first metric is interstate travel time reliability. This is defined as the percentage of person miles traveled on the interstate that are reliable. The second metric is non-interstate national highway system, or NHS, travel time reliability. This is defined as the percentage of person miles traveled on the non-interstate that are reliable. In the context of system performance, reliability is defined as the 80th percentile travel time divided by the 50th percentile travel time. The second metric is freight performance, and this is defined as the Interstate Truck Travel Time Reliability Index. And in terms of reliability for freight, this is measured as the 95th percentile travel time for trucks divided by the 50th percentile travel time for trucks. Next slide. So these system performance measures and freight performance measures are available in relate to the MPO's LRTP goal number 1 to manage and optimize the transportation infrastructure and services. In the MPO's LRTP chapter 2, we provide the 5-year targets and 2050 targets for these performance measures. Next slide. So just looking at the 2019 performance versus our MPO's 5-year targets and the 2050 targets. In terms of the 5-year targets, the MPO was able to meet 1 of the 3 performance measures. And in terms of the 2050 targets, the MPO was able to meet 2 of the 3 performance measures. You'll notice for the 5-year target that the interstate reliability performance measure is set at a very high level of 100%. Because this level was set so high at 100%, it's quite difficult to always maintain a 100% perfect progress. But the MPO overall has been scoring very high on this measure, scoring in the upper 90s. Next slide, please. So we'll take a deeper dive at each of these performance measures, starting off with the interstate travel time reliability. As I mentioned earlier, the MPO 5-year target for interstate reliability was set at 100%, and the MPO was able to meet this measure first in 2017, but then in 2018 and 2019, performance was a bit down at 99% and 97% respectively. These performances aren't bad as they're in the upper 90s, but they just don't meet the 100% target. And then in terms of the 2050 target, the MPO set a target at 95%, and the MPO area has been meeting this target since 2017. Next slide, please. The second measure is the non-interstate travel time reliability. For the MPO's 5-year target, this was set at 66%, and the MPO has been performing above this target since 2017. And for the MPO's 2050 target on this metric set at a 75% level, and the MPO has also been performing above this level since 2017. Next slide. Lastly is the interstate truck travel time reliability. The MPO set a 5-year target and 2050 target at 1.28, and the MPO area has been performing better than this target in 2017 and 2018. But in 2019, performance was a little bit under at 1.33. There's only a slight difference between 1.33 and 1.28, so this underperformance isn't too alarming. Next slide. So the MPO is now continuing to report on various performance measures at a more regular schedule. As soon as data for these performance measures become available, we'll be reporting these out to the various committees. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions you might have on these performance measures.
Gee, thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, I hear none. Item number 10 is report on the transload facility, an update from Zach.
Thank you. I wanted to give you a quick update on where we're at with the transload facility. The environmental assessment was under public comment through July 27th, so the public comment has been completed. We only received 2 comments on the EA. We think that both of those might have come from somebody from merchants, just based on the content of the comments and seem to be some insider knowledge on the project. So those comments will be addressed as part of the finding of no significant impact. Each of the comments in there will be addressed in the FONSI. So speaking of the FONSI, it is currently being reviewed by the FRA. It's kind of bounced back and forth a couple times through a couple different revisions. I believe we're pretty close to having the FONSI completed. There are a few things that we're waiting to hear back from SHPO to get that FONSI completely finalized. But hopefully we will get that information from SHPO within the next week or so and be able to finalize that document. Additionally, Des Moines Industrial has received their final engineering sign-off from each of the railroads. So that's very positive news. The grant agreement is just finalized in draft form and waiting for the FONSI to be completed. Once the FONSI is completed and approved by the FRA, we'll be able to move forward with the grant agreement, signing that and getting all that taken care of. So we are coming down to the obligation deadline, but we're on time and should be getting all these things coming together here very shortly. Additionally, the sub-agreement with Des Moines Industrial for the build grant is being developed. Our legal counsel had a call with Des Moines Industrial's legal counsel earlier today, I believe, and has discussed this sub-agreement. They're providing a few comments in there, which Scott will share back to us. So I'm thinking that we'll have that sub-agreement pulled together here within the next few weeks as well. Next slide. As far as next steps go, as I mentioned, we're just waiting for the FONSI to be completed for the environmental assessment portion of this project to wrap up and be able to sign the build agreement. Next slide. As far as next steps after that go, in the screen before you is kind of a breakdown of what the timeline looks like moving forward. This timeline is from the grant agreement. So I would note that there is a little bit of additional time built into this. Some of these things might actually happen a little sooner than what they're listed on here. But once the grant agreement is signed and the environmental assessment is all completed, Des Moines Industrial will be able to move into more of the construction phase. So their plan is to start doing some groundwork this fall and then be ready to start construction in the spring. During the winter, they'll be able to do their final design, be able to be completed and approved, as you can see on there, by December 31st. But that's kind of the basic schedule moving forward. The plan to really start constructing this project in early spring of 2020 or 2021, that is. So that's where we're at with the transload facility. All things pointing towards a very positive direction. So if you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Hey, Zach, it's Steve. I know that $25 million grant was awarded to Alliant Energy in that group in Cedar Rapids. They never went forward with it. Is any of that money available to us?
No, the DOT turned it back to the Fed.
Okay.
They did that a year and a half ago.
Well, I was assuming if any of it could have been used by us, hopefully they would have tried to point it in our direction, but I never asked the question.
Yeah, I asked them a couple times, but the way the language is, they'd have to get Congress to redo the language in the bill to shift the funds. So it was just easier for them to turn it back in.
It's amazing. It's easier to not use 25 million than to use them.
Yeah, I would have liked to have had it.
That's for sure. Any other questions for Zach? Zach, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item number 11 is a report on the Purple Heart Highway update from Todd.
Yeah, thank you. HNTB consultant we have on updating the report is kind of completing their, it should be QA, sorry for my typo. Quality assurance, quality control on the traffic operations and safety analysis on the project report. They're also finishing the research on overweight and slow moving vehicles, finding out other areas and the language that's been used to accommodate those vehicles on other similar corridors. Cost estimates are also being updated. Given new criteria that the DOT has, I think the cost will be substantially lower than we had in the last report in 2012. We expect a draft of the report on or before August 21st. They seem pretty confident they'll be done a little bit before that, so we'll see. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions? All right, I hear none. Item 12 is report on the water trails, an update.
Yeah.
Todd.
Thank you. Project's continuing to work on its original schedule to meet the deadlines for the build grant. We did get the ARPA permit from the Corps of Engineers earlier last week. This lets the cultural resource team get into Prospect Park. The Corps owns the land there where the city has Prospect Park, so we had to get a special permit to get in there. This allows us to keep the environmental reviews on schedule. We have a draft of the build grant agreement being reviewed by the DOT and Federal Highway. The city's also reviewing the design team's memo on the compensatory storage of water and rise in the floodplain along Stone Avenue, making sure that everything works for the city in relation to flooding. Next slide. Going forward, a draft of the CE is to be to the Iowa DOT for review end of this week. Preliminary design should be complete in November. Check plans, those are kind of the final check the DOT does on all the design work in early February. And then we will review them after the DOT looks at them and then get them out for submittal on a bid package in May. And that should allow us to meet the original schedule. If during some of the COVID-related bills for recovery, we can talk about doing extensions, and Dylan may touch on this a little bit. Next item, extensions for build grant. We haven't got one for this yet, but we're still working on it with our partners and congressional delegation. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Todd? Do you have a timeline of when they would give you that answer about the extension?
It would be related to one of the recovery bills. So whenever they start talking again, we might have a better indication. They have included language for the 2018 build grants, which would affect the transload one, not that we need that extension there. But they haven't included the 2019, which is what the water trails one is yet. So we're trying to get the 2019 included in the next bit of revision of the language.
Okay. Any questions for Todd about water trails? All right, we'll move on to item 13. It's a legislative update from Dylan.
Thank you. So a couple things going on here. One is that, sorry, this didn't get updated with more recent stuff. So sorry about that. The couple things here. One is that the appropriations bill for our T-HUD has been put forward in the House. Nothing's happened in the Senate yet, though, and there weren't any major changes to that. For what you see here on the screen, this is what we reported last time. None of this has really moved forward either, especially with the Moving Forward Act. As it says there, the Senate Majority Leader McConnell said he wasn't going to bring it forward, and he hasn't. So that hasn't really happened. The thing that Todd was just touching on is the HEALS Act, which has been introduced by the Senate, does have some transportation related provisions in it, and also some noticeable things not in it. So as he mentioned with the build grant, the 2018 build grants, there's some language in there that would basically extend it out a year. For any unobligated funds, they'd have another year to obligate those funds. The transload grant that we received was in 2018, but like Todd said, we probably really won't need that provision. And they're working on getting it into adding 2019 grants into that as well, working with the partnership and our congressional delegation. The other things that are included in there are somewhat minor. There's a provision to look at the Highway Trust Fund and try to get that a little more shored up than it is. It would create a bipartisan subcommittee basically to look at that. The other thing that is absent from the bill that is getting a lot of organizations that we work with, national organizations that look at transportation, is there's no transit or passenger rail provisions in there. So that's something that they are trying to get in there, and I think, as a staff, we'd be supportive of that as it helped DART and our other transit partners in the state. So that's what I have for you as far as legislative update. I don't know if Todd has anything else to add.
No, I think you hit the high points. The two sides are quite far apart right at the moment, as everybody's probably aware of. But we'll continue monitoring and bring you any new information.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Item 14 is a report on upcoming events from Shiroshi.
I'm going to go ahead and take this one. Just wanted to make you aware of a virtual conference that's happening on August 18th. It's the Mid-America Trails and Greenways Conference. Registration for this is free. There's a link on the screen there in front of you for where to go if you would like to register. Again, just wanted to make you aware of this event in case it was something you would like to participate in.
Great.
I think that's it.
All right. Item 15 is any other non-action items of interest to the committee.
Yep, I'll report on this one. It's Allison here.
I have Allison. Yep.
Yep. Most of you get the DLAN emails. This did come up just a couple days ago. There are two different hazard mitigation funding opportunities coming from FEMA at this point. One focuses more on flood mitigation, whereas the other one is rolling out with a new program called Building Resilient Infrastructures and Communities. It's very much aligned with programs that were from FEMA before. They just renamed it and repackaged it. Couple things to note is that both programs are 75% federal, 25% local and cost sharing. Each jurisdiction will have to be an Iowa sub-applicant. And so any applications need to go to Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management Department for their review by December 31st. One of the requirements is having an active and updated hazard mitigation plan. The MPO finished that for the county last July, so that is active. However, if there are new projects that you would like to have funded that are not in that plan, it will need to go through the Polk County Emergency Management Board for an amendment to the plan. And so if you would like, you can contact me. Also, AJ and Cameron Stufflebeam at Emergency Management are well equipped to help you get that on an agenda item. As an item and get that through their board so it can be submitted. If you have any questions, by all means, please reach out to me and I can try to connect you with the right people.
Thank you, Allison. Any questions or comments? All right, our next meeting is scheduled for September 9th at 11:30, our executive meeting. We do. Todd.
I'm sorry, you broke up there, Joe.
Oh, sorry. Our next executive meeting is September 9th, but we do have a full policy meeting next Thursday, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. If there's nothing else, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Everybody be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.